Well, good morning, my friends. How are you? Okay, now I wonder if that comment will come up. Huh. I'm trying to respond to you, Eli. Okay, part of my comment came through. Eli, if you're there, I'm responding to your comment. I say, actually, Eli, I don't mind guides being licensed. If a person is going to take money from the public, I believe there should be a certain level of professionalism and competence. The guidelines are pretty minimal, not like some other states, i.e., Alaska. So that's what I was writing back to you, and it didn't show up until I actually went live. Tommy, good morning. Congrats on that bird. David, good morning. How are you? My good friend Craig, always a pleasure, buddy. Joel, good morning. Ricky, how are you? Hey, Gene. The helm on that Angler Quest looks pretty sweet. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. Thank you, Cap. Yeah, it's a sweet boat. It's at Linwood Beach Marina right now. They've got her pretty well ready to rock. They water tested her yesterday, put the prop on, configured the autopilot, swapped out trolling motors, put a different battery in, so it's ready to rock. But I'm not going to be out there on Saginaw Bay today, I'll tell you that. That and more, Eli, for sure. The guiding regulations, proposed regulations in Michigan are not nearly as strict as for a Coast Guard charter captain. Good morning, Rob. How are things in the North Country? I will be up there in about a week and a half. I'll see you up there. Charles, driving home to Gwyn to see you tonight. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to run that boat 2 years, Craig. Absolutely. I'm going to run that boat 2 years. It is getting so hard to get Angler Quest these days. And even though that boat is a 2022, it's a brand new boat. It just happens to be a 2022 year model. So I will run it through this year, 23. And my plan is ideally, I'd like to run it right on through 24 as well. So it's ready to rock when the springtime comes around next year. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Dan, good morning. Hey, short timer, how are you? Thank you, David. Appreciate that. My name is Mike Avery. This is Behind the Mic with me, Mike Avery, here in the Outdoor Magazine radio studio. Here to record this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. I'll tell you who's coming up on that show here shortly. But first, a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to talk. Sometimes when I say the word talk, here it comes like talk. I'd like to talk about some things. Danny, good morning. How are you, buddy? Danny? RMEF, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Again, my favorite mug. I like it because it holds a lot. I can put 2 cups of coffee in here. When I leave the house, it'll stay warm right on through about this Behind the Mic. Jason checking in from the Ford Dearborn truck plant. Jason, I think I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask you again. Are you guys making the EVs, the Lightnings, or are those made somewhere else? Ed, it is coffee time. I hope you're enjoying your coffee this morning. Yeah, so I do have the new boat. I picked it up. I went to the Apex Marine plant in St. Louis, Michigan, Monday, hooked onto the boat. And I'll tell you this, you get those boats out of the water and they look huge. This is a 26 footer. It's 8.5 feet wide. And it looked like a house behind that truck. It did make the back end of my truck squat down a little bit. People said, oh, you need air shocks. Well, you know what? I pull a boat, I said 30 miles, probably 40 miles once or twice every 2 years. I'm not too worried about towing because I don't tow. Thank you. Oh, Jason said, yes, sir. You build them right there in Dearborn. That's cool. I thought I was ready to embrace the EV technology. I'm having second thoughts about it now, but I do think they're cool vehicles, and I like the fact you're building them right there. Dennis doggone it. Dennis says, heading north with Dave to do some fishing, putting in his new electric pontoon. You guys are killing me. How many times have I said, you need to come to Saginaw Bay and fish with me? Maybe sometime before we're all dead, we can do that. Ace, say hi to Dave to me. Electric pontoon. Does that mean it's an electric? Oh, there's ants here in the studio. Does that mean yes, yes, yes? Does that mean it's an electric outboard or a motor? Craig, you bought a Tesla to commute with. Well, but you had that hybrid. I remember you had that F1. Was it an F-150 or a Ranger hybrid, which I liked a lot. That was like the best of both worlds, isn't it? Well, you might be laughing your ass off, Rick, but the rest of the world isn't. And as long as the politicians are pushing them, we're going to see them. Just like everything else, politicians get it in their mind. I don't care if it's gun control. Look at our clowns here in Lansing. What they're trying to do with gun control. You get the wrong people in a position of authority who have the wrong morals, and they can do a lot of damage. What does that mean? Joe checking in from Germ Fast. Randall, good morning, Mike. There are a lot of white lines being laid out in the sky this morning. Jet trails, contrails? I mean, what does that mean? Good morning, Greg. Eli says he's going electric this year with a 14-foot V bottom with solar panels. Hey, good morning, Mike. How are you? Mike Horswell of Jay's Sporting Goods. He's been knocking the snot out of the walleye up on Gogebic up in the UP. And now back to work, I would suspect. Mike, you saw that bird that I killed with that 10-point crossbow that I got from you guys there. I'm heading up to White River, Ontario. I was worried I wasn't going to be able to make the trip, but I am. And I'm heading up there next Friday. The season opens, what is it, June 3rd, 2nd or 3rd. And I'm going to use that crossbow to put an arrow, actually a rec broadhead, through the first respectable bear that walks in front of me, and then turn right around and come back to Saginaw Bay and try to get some fishing in. Craig says I can charge for free at work, so it'll pay for itself. No brainer, hey, Greg? Craig, no brainer. Jason says he's not sold on it either. It's a beautiful truck, but it'll take a V8 gas engine. They are beautiful, though, right? I mean, you have to respect the technology that goes into those things. They are crazy. Well, I got about 50 people watching. Very true, Emil. Jim, not a fan of EVs. Trading one resource for another. Strip mining is ruining our landscape. There has to be something else. Seems like it. Listen, and I'm not going to get too far off track here, but I keep saying this. The world is going the wrong direction. The politicians in charge of things these days are just absolute morons. What you see going on in the public schools these days, what you see going on with the way they're trying to indoctrinate our kids. And I'm not talking about this from a philosophical or an esoteric perspective. I've seen this. I see this in the local high school. I've seen it. You know, boys going into the girls' bathrooms because they said they were identified as women, and these poor young girls have to deal with it because the schools and the local politicians and the school leadership don't have the guts to stand up for it. What is it with MRC? I don't know what MRC is. Kevin's headed up to Sioux Lookout. Week fly fishing, nice. I do know I have the perfect job, Rick. Honestly, I do. God has blessed me with a wonderful job, the best thing I could be doing in my life, and I do know it. And I appreciate the fact that you say you admire me, but there's nothing to admire here. I'm just a guy who happened to stumble into, with God's help, a pretty cool spot. Hey, Lisa, how are you? Kevin, interesting question. Any more info on the dead walleye and the unattended hoop nets a few weeks ago? The investigation is over, Kevin. I talked with again, here's the talk. I sound Jewish. Talked. I sound like a New York Jewish person. I talked with the investigating officer, and that investigation is done because there was nothing done wrong. You know why? because there's no regulation that says commercial fishermen have to check their nets. If you go out and trap muskrats in Michigan, there's a law that says you have to check those traps every day or two, depending on where you are in the state. But you can put a trap net out in Saginaw Bay that kills thousands of walleye, and there's no regulation that says you have to check it. You know why there's no regulation? Because the clowns in Lansing are too concerned about gun control, taking guns away from law-abiding, decent, God-fearing people to worry about things like a law to check your trap nets. It's crazy. I just don't know. And again, I'm getting off course here, but I don't know how long good, law-abiding, decent people are going to continue to put up with this crap. Uncle Johnny, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you and your lovely bride last night. I hear she's feeling better. That's good to hear. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, Steve. If people let the jokers get away with it, then they're going to get away with it. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Jason says, you're correct. Politics. Okay. Look at the NRC wanting to change our opening day for archery and firearm seasons. Or how about the NRC wanting to change the proposed regulations, deer hunting regulations sent to them by the DNR biologist, and impose antler point restrictions statewide? Jeff, I get my fill of this crap every day in emails. Can't wait to be done with it. At least that's the overall avenue of bull coming my way. it'll be over soon, Jeff. Yeah, I have, Brian. I've talked about that I talked about that several times. I think it's an interesting story, but it's my story, and probably nobody else cares. They didn't do anything wrong, Gene. You can't make a commercial fisherman pay for the fish that are killed in his nets if there's no regulation that says he has to check those nets. Hey, Cap. Jason Graham, who's my main guy at Linwood Beach Marina right now, and I got a lot of friends at Linwood Beach. Jason is the guy that when I pulled into the parking lot there, and Jason is with Linwood Beach, also Send It Charters. Jason will be on the radio show this week. Jason's the guy who, when I pulled into the parking lot there with that new 8526 Angler Quest Pro Troll behind me, and I had to get some things done, Jason's the guy like, hey, I'll help you. I'll take care of it for you. He said, it's going to be a blow day Wednesday, which it is. He said, I got time. I'll rig it for you. I didn't have to be rigged. He said, but like I said, he'll put the new prop on. Had to do some stuff with the bimini. I put a new battery in it. I had a strap to the bimini. Good morning, Jonathan. Swapped out the trolling motors, configured the autopilot. Well, Jason did that for me. So Jason, you're like, all I can say, Jason, is I don't know what kind of bourbon you drink, but be expecting a little gift when I see you next time. Senditcharters.com, senditcharters.com. Rick says, hey, Mike, you looking for a partner? I'm retired and bored. My wife told me to find a job. I'm not looking for a partner. Jason, it's unreal. We voted for the NRC to protect our wildlife, rules and regulations from special interest groups and antis based on sound scientific. Not seeing much of it. It's your opinion, but I think it's a valid opinion, Jason. I wasn't, Jerry. I wasn't until somebody got me going. I did not hear that. YouTube went after Nugent for violating community standards. I'm not surprised. Bernie says he's headed to the golf course. Why isn't it 80 and sunny like yesterday? Because you're headed to the golf course, Bernie. That's why. So anyway, going back to my boat, that Angler Quest, anglerquestpontoons.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com, senditcharters.com. It's at Linwood Beach right now. It's ready to go. But obviously today and tomorrow, I'm not going to run that boat across Saginaw Bay because of the strong northeast winds. The plan is Friday. I'm in the studio Friday. We're doing some time shifting to cover the Ontario bear hunt I have coming up. But I will be in the studio Friday morning, and the plan is early Friday afternoon when I get out of the studio, I'm going to run up to Linwood Beach, and I will then run that Angler Quest across Saginaw Bay over to my slip in the marina that I keep, that I stay in at the mouth of the Saginaw River. People say, why don't you stay at Linwood Beach? You promote Linwood Beach. I love Linwood Beach. Linwood Beach is a wonderful, beautiful facility. The only reason I don't stay at Linwood Beach is, and this goes back several years, when I first started working with Angler Quest, and we were trying to get the Angler Quest name out there and trying to get people to see Angler Quest boats. Jonathan, would you mind knocking down that thermostat a couple degrees? There were none of them down on the river. There were a few of them at Linwood Beach, but there were none down on the river. I thought, well, I'll go down there and show the boat off there. Now we don't need to show the boats off. They're all over the place. But now these days I spend most of my time, and Jason can verify because he's the one who transferred my waypoints over from the old boat to the new boat. He's seen my waypoints. I don't travel far to fish. I mean, most days I bet you I don't go 5 miles to fish. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Good morning, Cliff. How are you? Appreciate you joining us on this edition of Behind the Mic. With me, Mike Avery. Let me tell you and I'm here in the Outdoor Magazine radio studio to record this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. And this is the Outdoor Magazine radio studio for a couple of reasons. Number one, look at the logo behind me. It says Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine radio. Also, I have 2 microphones in front of me, so I must be in a radio studio. Avery, why do you have 2 microphones? I have this one, my social media microphone, and I have this one, my official broadcast microphone. It's not gold-plated like Rush Limbaugh had, but it is an official broadcast microphone. Rick, hey, Mike, I sent you an Ask Avery email about a month ago. Just curious to see if you had a chance to look at it. I probably did, Rick. I think I've looked at every one of them. But if you want to resend it, what I do is when I get the Ask Avery ones, I put them over in a separate file. Good morning, Ross. How you doing, buddy? Dentist office does not sound fun. Brian, good morning. How are you? Huh. No weapons allowed on YouTube. Wow. Gene, I don't even, for me, the black hole off Linwood, I mean, I fished it in the past when I used to fish out of Linwood Beach. I don't go that far to fish. My favorite fishing hole is like 1.5 miles. I love to fish that skinny water and watch people run by me on their way out to 1 and 2, burning their gas. Have fun. 3 minutes. I'll stay right here in the skinny water and catch my fish. Okay, coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, Jason Graham, who is on here with us right now. Mike, I have a 300 Merc XS on that boat, 300 Merc XS. Good morning, Kevin. We don't run any music on Behind the Mic. Jason Graham will be joining me, my leadoff guest on the Outdoor Magazine show. In fact, we'll talk with him throughout the entire first hour. We'll talk about the phenomenal fishing on Saginaw Bay right now, how he targets his fish. We'll talk about Linwood Beach. We'll talk about Send It Charters. I also want to talk to him a little bit about rigging a boat. For example, he said, Avery, your transducer is not pointed in the right direction if you want to pick fish up at speed. So I'll talk with him about a lot of fishing related topics. In hour number 2, Chris Kreiner is going to talk about summertime coyote hunting. Then Shelby Adams from the DNR on the controversial, in some circles, practice of clear cutting. And then this week's Ask Avery segment, I had it here. I'll tell you what it is. This week's Ask Avery segment, why considering changing firearm season to a Saturday, yada, yada, yada. Saturday interest could renew hunter interest. But isn't that why we have the youth hunt? I will address that question. Ed can't find me on YouTube. I'm there. And then in our third hour, we'll talk about fishing standard rock in the middle of, not in the middle, 50 miles offshore Lake Superior with Captain Rick O'Neill of Kimmer's Charters I think they're out of Autrain. Marty said he'd love to learn how to fish the skinny water. I'd love to learn how to fish the deep water, Marty. I mean, the reason I love the skinny water If you're fishing 8 feet of water, you know where the fish are. They're in that 8 feet. You go out to 25 feet of water, you got a lot more room to figure out where they're at. When the fish are in tight, that's where they are, and they come in shallow to feed, and that's why I like it. But that's just me. Let's see, checking some clocks here. 12, that one can go. Delete. 30 seconds. Shortly, I'll change my focus. I won't be able to directly interact with you as I am right now. I will not be able to answer your questions because I'll be recording the opening segment of the radio show. But I would encourage you to stick around. You can watch me record that. Also, tonight at 7 o'clock, I'll be back here for another edition of Wednesday Night Live. If the weather was a little nicer, blast off. If the weather was a little nicer, I might consider doing a Wednesday Night Live from Linwood Beach Marina tonight and give you a walkthrough of my new boat. I will probably hold off on that until we get a little bit nicer evening. Hey, John, good morning. How are you? How are things over at Lure Lipstick, lurelipstick.com? Appreciate that, John. There's Dave. No, Dave, you come south and you and Ace fish with me on Saginaw Bay. Always good to hear from you, buddy. All right, my friends, I got to go. I've got to record this opening segment of the radio show. Have a good day. I'll see you tonight, 7 o'clock, for another edition of Wednesday Night Live. Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And so glad to have you along with us. How is your Memorial weekend starting off? Or how's it wrapping up, depending on when you're listening to the show? Kind of a big weekend in the outdoors, isn't it? Unofficial kickoff of the summer season. Pretty cool time of year. I don't know if you're going to be out barbecuing or grilling or camping or fishing or working on food plots or whatever, but many of us have a 3-day weekend. Time to take advantage of what our great state has to offer. You know, to a lot of people, Memorial weekend is just, again, it's a third day off. It's a reason to get out and have fun. The real reason, let's think about the real reason behind Memorial Day. Originally, I think it was called Decoration Day. And the thought was to decorate the graves of those who had given their lives in service of our country. And that's still the real technical meaning. I shouldn't say technical. That's still the real meaning of Memorial Day today. Honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving our country and protecting us. The people who didn't sit back and watch. The people who either were drafted, enlisted, whatever, but ended up in the service. They may have ended up overseas. They may have ended up on the water, in the desert, in a jungle, in a swamp somewhere, and they didn't come home. And they did that so we can enjoy the freedoms we do, the freedoms we have. I try to keep that in mind throughout this entire weekend. I've had a pretty good life. I've done some stupid things. I've made some mistakes, but overall, God has blessed me with a very, very good life. But I have one true regret. I never served in the military. I wish I would have. When I was a young guy, I wish I would have taken a couple of years out. Instead of jumping right into college, I wish I would have stepped up. I said, okay, I'll do it. Now, granted, this was shortly after Vietnam and things were looked at a little bit differently. That's no excuse. It's no excuse. But it was a different world then. But it's something I have regretted my entire life. One of the few true regrets I have in my life is that I never served. So the least I can do this weekend is to honor and remember those who did. Now, in my family, Memorial Weekend has become more than just a time to honor those who lost their lives in the service. It's become a time to honor family members who have gone on ahead before us. And in my mind right now, I am remembering those people and I am honoring their memory. So what is going on? I said it is Memorial Weekend, 3-day weekend. Hopefully Mother Nature will cooperate as we are in the studio right now. It's an interesting morning. It went from 80 degrees overnight. The wind picked up. It's blowing like crazy. It's kind of chilly. Forecast looks like it's going to get nice though. I think we're finally about due for some nice weather to continue on through the summer, huh? I'm pretty excited. I do have my new Angler Quest boat, an 8526 Pro Troll with a 300 horse Mercury outboard on it. I went out to the Apex plant in St. Louis, Michigan. By the way, you should know that Angler Quest boats and Quest pontoons are built right here in Michigan. So I went to the Apex plant. I hooked onto the boat. I towed it up to Linwood Beach Marina on Saginaw Bay. Um, it did make me realize, I got a pretty good sized truck. It's only a half ton, but it's a ZR2 and I got it lifted up and I think it's a sharp truck. The guys at Garber hooked me up real nice. But I found out it's really not designed for towing heavy loads because this 26-foot Angler Quest made the back end of the truck squat pretty good. It did look nice though with that truck in front of the Angler Quest. People said I posted a picture. People said, "Hey, you need air shocks back there. You need to raise the rear end of that truck." Yeah, if I was going to do any trailering at all, I would say certainly. But listen, once or twice every year or two, I make a 40-mile trip from the Apex plant over to Linwood Beach. That's the only towing I do, so I'm not too concerned about it. But I got the boat over to Linwood Beach. They needed to do some final tweaks on it. By that, I mean a water test. They needed to configure the autopilot. They had to put a prop on it, swap out the trolling motor, those types of things, minor things, but things that needed to be done before we could splash the Angler Quest. So as I'm sitting in the studio right now, the boat is ready to go, but Mother Nature is not. It is strong northeast winds out there. Tomorrow, Thursday, calls for strong northeast winds as well. Friday looks a little better. So by the time you hear this show, my plan is that I will have picked up the Angler Quest, run her across Saginaw Bay, got her into my slip at the marina near the mouth of the Saginaw River, and hopefully by the time the weekend is over, get 1 day of fishing in, the first day of fishing on that new Angler Quest on Saginaw Bay, because the bite is on fire right now. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take much advantage of it because very soon here now, and I have to think things through in my mind because we're doing some time shifting. We're actually recording 3 shows in a 2-week period to cover my Ontario bear trip. I ended up going to Ontario, or will go to Ontario, to White River, Ontario, to hunt with Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters, a place I've gone, a guy I've hunted with for close to 15 years now, probably 13, 14 years. And I love the August hunt. I love the mid-August hunt because it doesn't interfere with anything else. My fishing has slowed down by mid-August. There's not much else going on. And for me, it's a perfect time to get away, head north, and do a big game hunt, basically at the end of summer. Can't do that this year. My daughter Shelby's getting married at the end of summer. So I had to move everything up a little bit. So as a result, I'm going up there for their spring hunt. This is something they opened up here a few years ago, reopened a few years ago. So I'm going up there for the spring hunt. I'm looking forward to it, but I can't think of a worse week to be gone from fishing Saginaw Bay walleye than the first week of June. Hey, you got to do what you got to do. So I will be going to White River, Ontario. I'm thinking that the first respectable bear that walks in front of me is probably going to get an arrow through the ribs, through the pump station, if I'm making a good shot. And then I'll turn right back around and come back here with a couple coolers full of bear meat and ready to get fishing again. All right, so what else is going on right now? Have you seen whitetail fawns? There are a bunch of fawns out there right now. It is the whitetail fawning period. That means whitetail does are dropping, i.e. having their babies, their fawns, and you'll see them all over the place. They are a very cute, very cuddly looking, very adorable critter, and it is so hard. If you find a newborn whitetail fawn, they're beautiful. And a lot of people just want to walk over and pick them up and cuddle them. And some people say, oh, I got to take it home. It's abandoned. That fawn is not abandoned. Don't pick that fawn up. For one thing, it's illegal. It is illegal to pick up a white-tailed fawn. I think it's also immoral and unethical. Again, if you find a white-tailed fawn that you think has been stashed or abandoned, it hasn't been. That's the way Mother Nature works. The does will stash those fawns until they get a couple weeks old where they can get up and run. She will stash those fawns. Mother Nature teaches them to be quiet and not run. She'll come back a couple times a day to nurse them, to feed them, and then she'll leave them again. They're not abandoned. If you find one, yes, take a picture. But don't sneak up to it. Don't try to touch it. Don't get in there real close. Don't screw everything up by leaving your scent all over the place. And no, it's not abandoned. And you know what? Even if the fawn was, okay, I'll take this one step further. If you find a dead doe that got hit on the side of the road and it's a fresh accident, and she gives birth to that fawn while you're sitting there as the last thing that she does, so you know the fawn is being abandoned, still don't pick it up. Don't pick it up. Well, I just want to make sure I want to make sure it lives. Are you doing that wild animal a favor by taking it to a rehabilitator? An animal that's supposed to live wild and free, that sounds corny. Have you done it any favors by taking it to somebody who's going to raise it in a barn? Honestly, I can't see any reason ever to pick up a white-tailed fawn, and I would encourage you not to do it. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show after the break, Captain Jason Graham of Send It Charters at Linwood Beach Marina, talking about that fantastic walleye fishing on Saginaw Bay so far this summer, and talking about some other things as well. Then in hour number 2, Chris Kreiner talks about summertime coyote hunting. You know, most people don't hunt coyotes in the summertime, but the hardcore people do. Shelby Adams from the DNR about the somewhat controversial practice of clear cutting. And in our third hour, we're going to go to Standard Rock to fish Lakers with Captain Rick O'Neill of Kimmar's Charters. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Miner. That's this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. Your time's up. You going to come out of there early then?
What?
I said you're about 8 seconds over then. Will you clear that out early? Let me end this broadcast. All right, my friends, have a good day. We'll see you tonight, 7 o'clock for another edition of Wednesday Night Live.